Over to you, Brian, for your views first.
Thank you so much. Very honored to be today with you here. And indeed, the global picture is very clear, and it has had a very important disruption with COVID-19. How not to be able to have a conversation today without talking about the pandemic? But what we have been seeing is that we were in the midst of a number of mega trends that have been going on for quite a while. One of them was certainly this accelerated technological transformation. And this happened over the last 7, 8 years. Industry 4.0 was coined at Hanover already in 2011, 12, and the concept of the fourth industrial revolution was coined by the World Economic Forum already in 2015. But we were in the midst of this technological transformation. But we have also other important megatrends that are very fundamental happening, and I hope you will be able to touch on them today, which is climate change. The link also digitalization, climate change. We have global trade issues. We have a lot of migration that is also creating challenges. As I said, the outbreak of the pandemic has given another challenge. And in terms of Industry 4.0, we have been seeing an unprecedented digital transformation that is happening, especially in advanced digital production. And the main technologies, just to start mentioning in the global industrial landscapes, are among others 3D printing, big data, artificial intelligence, industrial Internet of Things. And this has been characterizing the interconnectivity between hardware and software to merge physical and virtual dimension of production. But also what we have to see is that at the beginning it was hardware and software, and then the production of data. And the characteristic of Industry 4.0 is this production of data that changes because we all migrated into cyberspace. What I say to as a metaphor to describe this new Industry 4.0, when industry also migrates into cyberspace and when everything is interconnected in cyberspace, we're talking about Industry 4.0. When the devices are interconnected, when the humans are part of this, this is what we consider Industry 4.0. But the pandemic has also brought a lot of transformation among the sectors, new business models, but also has shown a lot of resilience. It's very interesting to see that Asian economies have been much more resilient because we have seen, first of all, strong participation of the manufacturing sector and strong digital transformation going on and adoption of new technology in the firms. When we look at the big picture, at the geographical distribution, one difficulty is that there is a concentration of the new technologies. 77% of all innovations are associated with advanced manufacturing are in the higher income countries. Middle income countries, and I'm talking middle income countries, such as Brazil and Argentina, have only 3 or 4% of their companies adopting digital technologies, and small countries such as Ghana, Thailand, Vietnam are, I would say, pre-digital or pre-digital transformation. Digitalization has been going on before in relation to the automation phase, but here digital transformation is when we change the business model, when it is interrelated. And also to mention that in a disparity, we see also the participation of the SMEs. We need to think that 90% of the companies worldwide are SMEs, and they lack the knowledge, financial support, qualified workforce. And we are working to provide them the support. We're working in providing that support to acquire better technologies, guidelines for the use of artificial intelligence in developing countries. And most of the firms are three we could call it still 3 IR technologies. So we are working on that. So in a nutshell, I would like to say that this is it. We need to talk about skills. We need to talk also about the differences and the difficulty of a gender balance in this area, because it is a big problem that the STEM and the education is concentrated. So to finalize, let me say that we have to take better advantage of this smart technology concept, and we at UNIDO, we are working, and from the point of view of the UN, it is our dream to make the fourth industrial revolution work for all. Thank you. Back to you.
Well, thank you so much for that, Bernardo. And I think you brought in a very unique picture, which I believe gets missed out, in most forums where people get excited about technology, which is, the human angle, the human aspect. And I think you also very interestingly underscored the role that SMEs would play, as we move ahead. But when we talk about, of course, the human picture, the human angle, we talk about SMEs. I think if what comes to the top of my mind really is the automotive sector. It's one of the largest employment generators in the world. It's a sector which involves the largest of organizations down to SMEs that manufacture ancillaries, right? And that's where maybe Ralph, I would value you stepping in. How do you see the technology evolution when we talk about manufacturing in automotive sector? If you can share some aspects around, what is the role of technology, and what are we expecting to see, and how are you seeing the human and technology balance?
Thank you, Andre. And first, thank you, Bernardo, as well, for the very insightful overview from your experience. And he touched on many, many interesting points, which is digitalization, connectivity, Internet of Things. And this is what, the Industry 4.0 is about. When it comes to the automotive world, there's a big shift between the Industry 3.0, which is the automation. Everything was automated, the robotics came in, and everything became a chain production very easily. When Industry 4.0 came in, and this is thanks to the internet, where everything became connected. Now, people look at it in two different ways. You have the back end, which is what I believe is the Industry 4.0, is connecting all the machines, connecting the supply chain, connecting all the inventory all together to make things much easier to be produced on the floor. Now, another aspect comes into place, which is the labor or the workers that are on the floor, on the production floor. Now, how can we have the technology come in and support them? And this is what I believe is happening today. This is what we are doing as well at W Motors, is to train unskilled labor and to train, especially when it comes to small companies that are coming into an industry that is unknown, like the Middle East here, as we are building the automotive industry. We need to train people very quickly. So this is where the industry comes, Industry 4.0 or 5.0 comes into play, where you have the VR, you have the AI, you have the artificial intelligence that is teaching the people very quickly. An example is, we're assembling a car in the production line. We have 3 guys that joined the team. They've never built a car before. So within 2-day process, they can easily follow a manual with a VR mask to know where each piece goes, where you put the screw, where you should unlock it. And this becomes a very easy process for anybody that can learn a skill very quickly. And this is what I believe is changing in every way. And an example is automotive, but it can be adapted in every single industry around the world. Now, moving forward, some key point that are really important to talk about is what Bernardo mentioned is the 3D printing. And 3D printing might not be conceived today and looked at as an Industry 4.0, but it is a big revolution when it comes to manufacturing. We produce our cars with 20% 3D printed parts. By doing that, you're cutting the cost by easy 80%. You're fasting, the production goes much faster. You get the parts out, ready to go, and installed in a much easier process. And you can play around with tons of material that we couldn't be used before, using tooling and molds and the different traditional process that we had before. And this is just the beginning of it. So imagine what's coming in the next 5 to 10 years. It's going to be a complete revolution for producing anything that we have in our mind, to putting it on the floor and getting it done very quickly. The second part, which is also important, and this is what I urge people to start focusing on, is also the blockchain that can play a very big factor today when it comes to the supply chain. Today, as manufacturers, as companies, we spend a lot of time looking for the right supplier with the right price. The tendering process takes endless times. It's still an archaic way of finding the supply that we need to use in our vehicles or in our products. Today, by unifying it on the blockchain by creating an NFT sort like of having all the suppliers in one place on the cloud. You send the RFQ, within a few minutes, you get the best price, the best delivery, and the product delivered to you right away. And this is something that's starting to take place. We have many companies that are doing it today. And I believe if we start putting our focus in it, it's going to revolutionize the way we produce and the way we can start getting things in a better price and a better quality right away.
Well, thank you for that, Ralph. And I think you brought up some interesting points. You talked about productivity. You talked about improvements on the supply chain, and those are valid aspects, right? With what we're hearing so far, with what you've mentioned, and Bernardo, it sounds like the improvements that technology are bringing are obviously benefiting the economic order. I think, Douglas, I'd like you to step in on this point, more to share with us, your thoughts, more so from, what are you seeing in the U.S., specifically with the American manufacturers on embracing technology, more so around, why are people embracing it? What are the benefits? I mean, we're talking about, when we talk about the fourth revolution, right, 5IR, I think we're talking about moving away from automation. So, and the American firms, other manufacturing organizations have been very well geared and, have been very constantly automating themselves anyways in the past. So what are the trends you're seeing? What are the drivers fundamentally? What are the benefits American organizations are seeing for technology adoption and moving to 4IR?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I've been in manufacturing my entire life. I started out working in a shop when I was just a kid. So this is an amazing time to be in manufacturing. Best time, I think, of my entire life. When you look at the opportunities right now for integrating these advanced technologies, whether it's Industry 4.0, talking smart manufacturing, transformational technologies, this really is a time. And one of the benefits or things that we've had in the U.S., of course, is a lot of what happens in the incubation and innovation of technology out of Silicon Valley. Some of that is happening in Boston around MIT. Some of it happens in Texas around Austin, but certainly in San Francisco area. We get a lot of new technologies being brought to the forefront. And one of the things that actually is interesting for watching the kind of metamorphosis of technology transfer in the U.S. market is little things like when additive became really interesting a few years ago. So I was using additive 20 years ago at my shop, but obviously it got to be more interesting when all of a sudden the price point for additive came down. So when it got to be you could get a $1,500 home additive printer, there was an entire maker movement that came about in the United States where lots of people were adopting it to just try out for different technology, whether it was making jewelry or making a spare part. The interesting thing was 500,000 people instantly became connected to additive technology, figuring out how to create an STL file and download some information, use an app on your phone. And those 500,000 people that became part of the maker movement eventually got into other engineering, other areas. They became pervasive in other parts of the fabric of manufacturing in the United States. And you're seeing that in lots of the other newer technologies happening the same way. Today, the good part back to that additive piece is, we've got this crazy thing going on with investments and SPACs in the US actually doing these large investments. And now these additive companies are being valued at hundreds of millions of dollars, which has created an enormous amount of R&D investment, which is then bringing the technology to the industrial sector at a more rapid pace. And you can actually watch that going to other things, whether you pick, Ralph mentioned blockchain, which I give him a lot of credit. Most people don't bring blockchain into the conversation. It's a critical technology to use for a lot of different IP, supply chain, even things you're trying to do, actually controlling different documents and contracts and agreements. It just makes the whole process easier. Advancing further, kind of the comfortableness that people are having today, getting into digital twin. Digital twin conceptually some years ago was this far off idea. And today already, from many different aspects, the amount of money that people are saving and not spending money building fancy prototypes, being able to test out engines and other things, which would previously use large amounts of money, to create those prototypes and being done over and over and over again. So when you start thinking about energy reduction, sustainability issues, when you can do those things in this virtual environment with the correct kinematics and systems, this is really revolutionizing what you can do in our space. And so, again, you can pick whichever technology you like in this space, cognitive automation, what's happening with AI, what's happening when you think about generative design. Again, the design capacity to do thousands and hundreds of thousands of iterations of best design and bring it to the forefront. Hybrid manufacturing, bringing machine tool technology together with additive technology to make best-in-class parts. The amount of technology being integrated into the manufacturing equipment that is now then being used in the facilities to actually, whether it's aerospace or automotive like we were talking about, really starting to drive the capability for small and medium-sized companies to be able to buy off-the-shelf technology at price points that are now low enough to become part of this revolution. One of the key pieces that is missing and is vital, though, for all of us to be thinking about is that the data that's coming from now this trillions of sensors, which is key, we have the ability to store it now in the cloud. We have the ability to do massive amounts of GPU processing in the cloud. That data that's coming off of most of our equipment is very disparate. And the world needs open standards to be able to have semantic dictionaries that just allow some commonality of use of the data so you can actually drive the productivity. And so as that starts to come together with this technology and end users understanding how they bring pieces that are easy off the shelf so that they can actually have a small company solve one problem with one piece of technology at a time before you try solving your entire factory, I think all of these themes and topics we're talking about start to really be leveraged by the greater manufacturing technology infrastructure around the world.
And there's some fabulous points there. I heard Douglas, especially where you're talking about how price points are of course, a major driver for enabling technology to get increasingly adopted, right? I heard you also talk a fair bit about how technology is assisting in more iterative prototyping in the design process. And I think that's where you brought in the element of how improved design is contributing to improved efficiency and sustainability. And those are some wonderful points as well. And I'll come back to that a little while in our conversation. But I would also pick on an element that you and Ralph talked about on the additive side and on efficiency in the manufacturing, and bring it up to Dr. Abdul Qadir, who is at the forefront of advanced manufacturing here in the UAE and in repairs. So, Dr. Abdul Qadir, what are your thoughts on the use of technology, for two areas that you're involved in? One on the side of manufacturing, and of course on the other side of repairs. Do you see a kind of an improvement in the need for repairs, from the embracing of technology, because that links us to outcome. And of course, I'd like you to talk a bit around what is your opinion on the role of technology in advanced manufacturing.
Well, thank you, first of all, for the opportunity to be part of this panel. And I have to say, it's very hard to add so much to what my colleagues have already covered in this domain. I fully agree, it's a very exciting time for people who love technology, because we have so many solutions that have matured to the point of deployment. I mean, on many of the themes that my colleagues mentioned, 3D printing, AI, virtual reality, IoT, blockchain, we are past the high point on the curve and we are going down the implementation route. And as you can imagine, in manufacturing and maintenance, this is a huge. So maybe I can touch on some examples that pretty much combine multiple technologies together. I always tell my team that what we do is we offer solutions. We don't offer technologies. And the difference here is that in a solution, what you do is you combine multiple technologies to solve a problem. And that's really what we have been doing within the Mubadala family. Somebody mentioned 3D printing. The beauty about 3D printing, when you combine it with blockchain, for example, is the fact that you can design a part anywhere in the world and print it for the user anywhere else. It doesn't matter if it was a million or 100 million miles away, so to speak. You got some aircraft parts, for example, that you know that that part is missing. What you can do is you design it somewhere in Italy and you print it here in Abu Dhabi. By the time the aircraft arrives, they would do the delivery, provided that it's certified. So this is one example. You combine, let's say, blockchain and 3D printing. Other theme that, frankly, COVID has accelerated and helped actually the deployment is the whole theme around connectivity as a whole. As you know, within our factories, the biggest challenge has been is that you have a limit on the number of people that you can have on the factory floor at any given time. So do you stop the production or what do you do with that? So we have implemented connectivity solutions that allow supervisors, for example, to be working from home and few people actually within the shop without actually reducing the efficiency or the productivity of our workshops. It's really these technologies that allow you to be fully immersed on the shop floor and get the instructions, as Sabbani mentioned, with virtual reality or mixed reality concepts to do that. I agree, blockchain is also a game changer for us. And the issue there is that when you think about supply chain, vast amount of data and information that need to be happening at various points within the supply chain. And that consumes time and it consumes effort. When you have something like this that allow you to share that information, to be available to everybody, one source of truth of information related to that component or related to that process, and it's immutable, nobody can actually change that. That actually already has solved some problems for us as related to the MRO processes. The same information is available to all of us, and we can take processes that take 30 hours down to less than 1 hour in terms of what we want to do for a given part. Reconcile quality issues, the same thing. So to us, I think the question becomes more of a deployment, and that depends on our ability to combine multiple technologies together. And one challenge we have to all work at actually is the regulations as goes with that, or the certification. Many of these themes, frankly, still require you to have approvals from FAA, for example, to allow you to credit exchange of data using a blockchain, for example. Even a 3D printing, to make sure that your part meets a certain spec, how do you do remotely quality control metrics for related to that? Hopefully that answers your question, but for us, truly, we are very excited about where we are in terms of deployment of digital technologies and 4.0 in general.
Yeah. And thank you, Dr. Abdul Qadir, for that opening note. And it's, again, I think I'm really amazed at some of the very unique points that we're hearing from this panel. I wanted to take say cue from what you just said and bring it back to Bernardo on the point around the deployment and also on the point of regulations. So Bernardo, this is a question to you. How do you see the deployment of technology today? Have we really moved into the era of Industry 4.0? Is there enough deployment happening? What is constraining it, if not? And where do you see regulations now?
The industrial capabilities definitely ultimately depend on the capabilities of the firms. This is correct, but we need to look broader. This means, first of all, we have said we need the skills, and we need to work on the skills and the capacity building for that. This is fundamental for the deployment. In the midterm, especially, we will not be able to bring an outreach for IR without working on especially the vulnerable young women, but skills are fundamental. Digitalization and digital transformation of the firm we have focused our discussion on this, and this is fundamental that in order to have technology capabilities, technological change, we need also investment, and we need this technology, knowledge, resources, and skills. But we need also to look further, and we have been thinking that it is important to work on what we call the business and innovation ecosystem. Yeah, we need this business environment where we have the interlinkages among all the stakeholders and actors, be it academia, research institution, ministries, private sector. We need to strengthen the innovation ecosystem from the perspective of partnership, of working together. This is maybe something fundamental for bringing and deploying 4IR. We need more digital cooperation. We need much more work, and also, to the question of regulation, we need agility. One of the big challenges of regulation is that the regulation is going after the technological development. It's running after. So in UNIDO, we have one methodology, which is technology foresight. And when you do technology foresight, you also can anticipate what type of regulations will be needed. But in this regard, and Douglas mentioned it as well, standards can be also a very important player. Standards can also be brought into fast track. I was listening to BIS, they call it BIS Flex. They have introduced for Industry 4.0 a new methodology to also make standards be developed faster, because the big challenge we have in relation to regulation standards is that the technology is going faster than the regulation, than even the standard. The standards can be a good complement, because the standards help to achieve public policy, and also something we have not been talking, all the negative aspects, the threats and the challenges that are coming with Industry 4.0, especially cybersecurity, spyware, data theft, intellectual property theft. All these issues can be and must be tackled by regulation, but standards can be a good complement. So we need to work on the governance. And back on the governance, I insist on the issue of digital cooperation, on partnerships, but at the end, we need also to bring investment, and we need infrastructure. So the deployment in developing countries, infrastructure will be key. But I would like to finalize insisting on the fact that we need to put people at the core of technological transformation. People need to be using technology, and not the other way around, that technology determines what people will be doing. Thank you.
Those are some amazing points, Bernardo, especially around, reinforcing on how we need to get people at the core of this transformation. And technology is really enabling, higher productivity and people development. So there's an alignment goal, I think, for us over there. Douglas, maybe it's more pertinent to pull you in on a couple of points raised here that I'm hearing. There's a whole talk of standards, governance, which are of course critically required so that they guide the digital transformation, right, in the correct path. What are your views on where we are on that today? Is just the first question, and how would you rank, let's say, the maturity of organizations, in your association, in your understanding, to manage transformation?
Yeah, it's funny thing when you talk about standards. So coming out of manufacturing industry, the last thing I wanted to do when I came to run the Manufacturing Technology Association in the United States is do anything with standards, because standards are very difficult and they take a lot of time. So mind you, my first preference is not having to deal with myself building standards. The issue is somebody needs to do it somewhere in the process in order to get some commonality at the end of the day. The first place, and the thing I would point out based on my experience doing these things, because they take a very long period of time, is don't create any standard if there's already a standard out there. One of the biggest problems we have is, different countries seem to believe that they need to develop the standard to somehow own the standard. But what they don't understand is, if you own the standard, it can't be a free and open standard. So it defeats the entire purpose. And so when you look at like China, for example, it has a 2025 plan. And in their 2025 plan, they need to be the ones that actually establish their own standards so that they're not adopting other people's standards. It's somewhat defeating of the overall concept. So I think one of the best places we can do it is our forums like this, quite frankly, where logical people can get together and say the best way to raise all the ships, raise the water together, all ships rise. Then you take advantage of the individual opportunity of the standard to drive the economics for your business. So in Ralph's business, I am sure in the automotive sector, he's going to be looking for things that make it the easiest to get data, have commonization of the data, harmonized data. Then he's going to leverage his expertise to do something discrete and specific with that data. What he does is different than what someone else does, but the open standard allows people to go do that. So the first thing to do is, again, in that space, when there's a logical standard that's out there that can be used and leveraged, obviously you want to go use that. Don't invent more standards. And then some default body like the ISO as an organization that's an international based organization, you try to leverage their support and verify, that it can be a commonized standard. But the other thing I'd say, just from a company, a smaller company standard, I'm trying to, again, imagine all the SMMs, so the small and medium-sized companies, they're not going to get involved doing this. They're not going to go figure out how to create a standard. They want the easiest, simplest thing that they can go use to go solve a problem. And so the general rule that I put out to people is, look, if you're going to wait for the standard to solve your problem, you're going to be waiting for a really long time. It's up to the big organizations, the major associations, the big, government sectors to try to solve those. Individual companies, nothing's out there today to be specific about, to be able to pick individual examples for saving energy, handling a vibration dampening issue, to figure out throughput, a vision system, to get enough commonization of your data, which is the opportunity for standard. Interconnect devices in a common way, have the data connected in a common way. There's a lot out there already today. Don't wait for perfection to come where everything works perfectly. There are lots of things on GitHub and other online open source downloadable apps that you can bring in. Start getting into this marketplace and solve one problem at a time at your company, and it'll explode with your personnel over time as they continue to get educated in this area. One last little comment in that space. This education issue, United States, it used to be send your kids to 4-year college, send them off after that. Look, technology is changing so fast. I'm trying to explain to people in my space, 2 years of college education is about all you're going to get to be useful, because whatever you learned in the 4 years, the 2 years before it already made it irrelevant. You need to be on cycles that are like 6-month or less cycles of this technology. It's a lifetime learning. You're never done learning. We need to, at least I'll speak for the United States, totally revamp our education systems to get effective in this common world that we're in today. So I'll let it go at that. I'll let someone else handle that.
All right, no, thanks. And those are some very interesting thoughts from you as well, Douglas. Just a follow-on question on that itself. I mean, again, on that second topic of preparedness, and how much do you think the manufacturing sector has already progressed in terms of embracing Industry 4.0 and embracing digitalization? Are they just people digitizing, or are you seeing a lot of digitalization happen already?
In the U.S. market, I would say there's probably not a manufacturer down to a 5-person shop that isn't doing something with what we're calling Industry 4.0 or smart manufacturing. The problem is most companies aren't doing something effective with it. Everyone's grabbing data, and I consider it data exhaust. They have lots of data and information. They're not really sure what to do with it. And the people who make manufacturing technology, my members, really need to make it more simple, more easy for anyone to go use it. So I think the top 10% of companies in the United States are using it pervasively. I think as you go down to small to medium-sized companies, you're lucky if 50% of those companies are effectively using it. Having it and using it effectively are two totally different things. There's still probably 10 or 20% on the very bottom that are doing next to nothing. So we have a long way to go, frankly. If we're talking about how you use the technology to truly change OEE or productivity or actually scaling sustainable solutions, I'd say we're not even at the precipice of getting over the 50% level. of true effective absorption of the technology in the United States at this point.
Those are some very valuable insights there. Ralph, coming to, I heard the word sustainable a few times, in different contexts in this panel. But here's a question to you. When you talked about adoption of technology, have you seen proof or benefits coming in terms of, let's say, reduction in energy consumption, in terms of reduction in resource usage or reduction in wastage? Are you seeing true benefits from the shift that happens between automation to Industry 4.0?
Absolutely. I think just the fact that we're spending less time producing parts is already an answer to one of these, the sustainability that is there. And even the material we're using today are completely different than what we were using 10 years ago or 15 years ago in matters of manufacturing and process and the whole thing. So there is a big shift. It still needs a long time to actually take into effect. I mean, in the automotive industry, you're still using, machines, you're still using energy, but many manufacturing facilities are shifting to green energy, they're shifting to solar panels too. So this is helping a bit for that. But we do need a lot of power to operate our facilities. In Dubai, our facility needs around 2.5 megawatts of power, which is solar panel, but also still have the grid connected to it. But bit by bit, we're going to get to that level where we can be self-sustained 100%. In matters of material, as I said, machinery being used, we're trying to reduce the heavy machinery by using smart machines such as 3D printing, such as additive machines that can help us do the process much easier. And these aren't necessarily very dangerous to the environment, in my opinion. So this is on one thing. But I would like to add an important point to what Douglas said as well: standardization in the automotive world. Today, when you look at the revolution of automotive, we went from the ICE engine, which has reached its peak, and then now shifting to EV. Shifting to EV, we're still at the beginning of it. We're still at the horse, if you want, horse 1.0 to compare to what a car should be. And what's coming next is going to be a revolution even beyond what we know. However, the companies realize that today the most intensive part of the car is the platform, is the chassis itself. Spending billions of dollars to develop chassis from each company, competing with each other, didn't make sense, or made sense before, but doesn't make sense anymore today. And if you look at what's happening in the automotive world, where all these alliances are born, but we never thought would be born, between American companies, European companies, even Chinese companies, all combining forces together to create a unified platform that's modular, that they can build their top hats on top of it, and each differentiate with their software BMS system and try to be different in the way they're approaching their style and their model. But in the end, it's the same platform being used. And this opened up a new division within the industry today. Instead of building cars, let's build components and platforms, open platforms. And this is what we're seeing. And companies like W Motors, we don't spend billions of dollars to build platforms. We partner with companies, we develop our own platforms with them, we take the under hat off the shelf, if you want, re-engineer the whole thing, we take our IPs, and then we build on top of it. And this makes it much easier for anybody to access the products, for anybody to build their products, and to create more sustainable products on the road very quickly and much cheaper. And this is what I want to point at when it comes to standardizing the product, standardizing what's behind it, the foundation of the product, and taking it beyond the automotive world and ahead of it. So it's happening, and this is what we're seeing in a way what the industry is shifting and adapting to what the needs are of today.
Thanks, Ralph. And I am cognizant that we're probably in the last leg of this panel, but I'd probably want each of you, starting with you, Dr. Abdul Qadir, to share your thoughts on how do we balance things out. And when I say balance, it's really about a few keywords. We're talking technology, we're talking people, we're talking about skills, we're talking about partnership, we're talking about the environment, right? What would all of you as panelists here have a lot of experience in most of these topics. What is your recommendation to people watching this session on what's the ideal way to proceed in a balanced manner? Dr. Abdul Qadir, first with you.
Sure. I think the premise of the question is that we have a major imbalance, which I actually would argue probably with. I think there is an optimal point where you want to push technology, and at the same time, you want to make sure the human aspect of manufacturing or business is dealt with. And the third leg of the triangle is, of course, the financial returns. Eventually, you are delivering a product that has to be competitive. Add to that now that the concept of sustainability, which has become very important for everybody. You look at these four functions, if you will, and you try to find for any given industry what would be the sweet spot that allow you actually to conduct your business, keep your people motivated and trained and capable of executing or working on new technologies, and at the same time get the most you can get from technology. In aerospace industry, for example, I don't think we have an issue, frankly, with motivating our people to work on technology or new technologies, because historically speaking, aerospace has been always at the forefront of taking new concepts and deploying them, both in defense and in commercial. I guess the question becomes, and I think Ralph mentioned that, the training aspect of it. How do you impart all these skill sets to make sure at the end of the day, in the final analysis, the business is not going to be impacted by either the training aspect of deploying the technology or the introduction of sustainability to the mix, at least on the short term. So these are the things that we're always pondering here. Everybody wants to switch from fossil fuel to hydrogen or to solar. In many cases, when we look at the cost of solar, it's still not there as related to making the business case for the transformation. However, I think we're getting into that sweet spot for us where we are comfortable with all these aspects coming together.
Thank you, Dr. Abdulkader. And again, Bernardo, would like to hear your words or your thoughts on balance as well. And I'd really want this to be, hard-hitting, your perspectives, something crisp that the audience can take away.
Coming from the global perspective, certainly I would like to bring the 2030 agenda, the SDGs, as the unifying context, because let me use the 5 P's: people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. We need to focus on people. We discussed this. We need to put the people at the forefront and not technology at the forefront. So this is clear. We need to worry about the planet, and Industry 4.0 digital transformation has a lot to offer for the circular economy, for energy saving. We did not have time to touch all the benefits that these technologies can bring, knowing that there are also challenges. Industry and digitalization also is over-consuming energy, no doubt about that. Prosperity, I think our colleagues from the companies have shown how this increased performance and productivity. Peace, we talked about. It is important that the challenges that come with cybersecurity are tackled. We have many issues related, we said it, cybersecurity, data privacy, cyber building fake technologies. Regulation is come to help us here. Standards will help productivity. And finally, partnerships. I think partnerships is fundamental. Bringing in the private sector on working together in digital cooperation. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for those very impactful statements. Douglas, over to you. Your thoughts on balance, key takeaways for the audience.
Yeah, it's interesting. From my perspective on balance, I think you don't have to worry about the technology part of it, because there's entrepreneurs around the world. They're going to solve the technology problem. So you don't have to, everybody wants to invent the next best, better thing. And so technology will solve itself. The people part does need to be solved. I think we get a little bit over kind of hyped in the media about how automation and technology is going to wipe out all the jobs. I can show you quotations from the 1920s, the 1930s, the 1940s, the 1950s talking about automation is going to take jobs out. There's a natural movement of getting people to adjust, and it will continue happening. Our job is to figure out how to have that happen faster, better, quicker, to be more agile, and make it more sustainable. So using augmented reality, which was mentioned, AR, VR, leveraging the new tools that are out there to actually accelerate, whether it's things online, LinkedIn Learning, Khan Academy, We have to find ways of changing the educational system. People will morph and change to fit the need. We just need to use the tools that we were just talking about to accelerate their learning, and the two will match up. I'm really not concerned. I think natural equilibrium will be reached.
Again, that's very powerful, natural equilibrium. Thank you so much on that, Douglas. Ralph, coming to you as probably helping us with last comments on this. Again, balance, technology, people, resources, environment. What are your thoughts, takeaways?
I agree with everybody. All my colleagues here pointed out technology is natural. It's going to come by itself. We don't have to emphasize too much on it, and we will adapt to the change automatically. The new people coming in, the new skills, the new, students, graduates coming out, they are coming in with a completely new insight to industry that we might not even know about. And this is what's nice, is to take these fresh talents and try to learn from them instead of us teaching them as well. And this is going to change the way we produce, change the way we think. It's going to lead to many, many more things. And balance is a key thing, like you mentioned as well. It is quite important to always know where we're heading, to always adapt to what the change is, and always listen and learn from the others that are working with us to be able to combine all and create something that's quite unique. And you never know, maybe in the way balance might be the future of technology. You never know. But this is a great time for us to be working, to be creating, to be manufacturing, and I really can't wait what the next 10 years are coming. So thank you all.
Well, thank you, Ralph, and thank you everyone here on the panel. I think to everyone viewing this, we've got some fascinating insights on the fact that one, technology is imperative. There's no stopping it. Two, there is a way for people to benefit as long as we're staying outcome oriented, and we make sure that the goal is to put people first. Technology serving people. We heard about how it will naturally flow, and that's putting it amazingly. And I think we've just heard that there is an avenue and a potential for technology to align with environment and to align with circularity and sustainability. So, it's an exciting evolution. That's what all our speakers have opined here. I think all of them are available on social media. So, please reach out to any of them for speaking to them about their personal thoughts. I would do that. And thank you and a very good day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to our moderators and panelists for giving crucial insights into the investment in manufacturing technology.